Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video, and welcome to episode number 3 of the My Digital Crush series. Now, what is that if you've never seen the others, or if you're new to my channel, and why is there an episode of Friends playing? Well, this episode of Friends here has Isabella Rossellini making a cameo in it, and it's funny in the context of the show because not long before, Ross had a conversation with the others about celebrities that he wants to sleep with, and they kind of mentioned, he actually made a list of like, well, here are my top 5 women who are famous actresses or what have you that I want to sleep with, and Isabella Rossellini was on that list. So when she shows up at the coffee shop, it's funny, there's a lot of hilarity that goes on. Now, my sister's a big Friends fan, and we would often have the conversation of, okay, well, who are the top 5 celebrity women for you then? And I would make a list, and then she would make a list of her top 5 celebrity men that she likes that way. And that would then morph into video game characters that you feel that way about. So I thought, well, to keep this kind of in a classy tone, what I have called this particular list that I'm doing right now is the My Digital Crush, the kind of the characters that I have an affinity for, and I've done 2 already. This is number 3, going from number 5 up to the number 1 spot, which is coming. I'm doing this one at this time of year because it's actually kind of within the theme of where we're at for this particular time of year. This one is a little bit monstrous, it's a little bit weird, it's fringe, it's out there, but I hope you like it, so here we go. Number 3. Capcom's Felicia. For pretty obvious reasons, I'll never forget the first time I laid my eyes on Felicia. But what was interesting is it wasn't so much her and her being practically naked, hypersexualized look that originally drew my eye. It was the Darkstalkers arcade machine that she is a fighting game character in. There was this arcade in downtown Vancouver, which is ironically still in business. I may revisit there someday. And there was this very strange looking Halloween-ish type of gothic purple arcade machine sitting in the corner, and it had a whole bunch of people around it playing, and I sort of leaned over and I noticed this is a really weird Street Fighter type of a game. You've got this like gothic monster movie Frankenstein and Dracula and Creature from the Black Lagoon roster of characters. And I just thought, oh, and not only the bizarre kind of characters that are in the game, but also the animation was a step above what had happened. I found out years later that was because Darkstalkers kind of showcased one of the newer pieces of arcade hardware from Capcom. But yeah, I just thought, whoa, what is this game with this like punk rock guitar playing skeleton guy and this witchy woman with the green hair and the purple leggings? What the heck is this game? And so my friends and I definitely, when we had the chance, we stepped up and we put in our quarters and we thought, right, let's choose a character. And I remember thinking, well, I kind of like the look of all of these Halloween-ish type monster people, but which one am I going to choose? And I'm not going to, well, I chose Felicia, and the reason I chose her is actually directly connected to the very top person on my list of 5 characters. And so rather than give away anything about her, I'm going to just say that Felicia shares a lot in common with the person at the top of my list. And based on that reason, that was why I selected Felicia to play in Darkstalkers, and I definitely enjoyed every minute of it. As a side note, although I'm not a huge monster movie fan, I've always had a special place in my affection for the Creature from the Black Lagoon film of the 50s. I like the creature design for some reason. And so you would think, well, you're obviously going to play that character. I did not. Also, Darkstalkers I was playing it in the early 90s, so the 80s had just passed, but I was a huge fan in the 80s of Billy Idol and his British rock thing. And so when I saw this, Lord Raptor's the name of the character, when I saw this zombie with like a punk guitar and a Union Jack on his leg, that would have appealed as well. And similarly, Sasquatch, the kind of snowman Yeti character, I found out years later he's actually officially Canadian. So you would think, okay, you've got three characters among many that you would choose. Why did you go for the semi-naked Catwoman? Again, it was partially because of character number one. That was the main motivator. But being a young man, I guess the fact that she was half naked also was a factor. But in my defense, Darkstalkers also showcases Morrigon, who is a very famous video game character in her own right, who has actually kind of transcended Darkstalkers itself and become synonymous with a lot of, for example, any cosplay event, you're going to see Morrigon represented there. And what's kind of interesting, if you compare and contrast Morrigon to Felicia, Felicia's ever so slightly deformed and semi-grotesque. I mean, sure, she's got the woman's body, but she has these large paws and, you know, hind legs and the tail and the hair. Like, she's somewhat a little bit of a monstrous figure. So, although, yes, I admit that the fact that she's kind of this sexy naked cat woman, there is also an element of the grotesque when it comes to Felicia. And that is something that, ironically, has a lot to do with the personality that has been attached to her through the anime series that exists. I'll talk about in a minute. But also, I find it's a charm with Felicia's personality that I'll get to later on. So you're probably wondering, what were Capcom even thinking in making such a strange game with such bizarre characters in it? This is a game that actually makes Capcom one of my favorite developers. They will take sort of a standard idea. Hey, let's make a movie monster fighting game. Since Street Fighter's so successful, let's have Dracula fight the werewolf, and then Frankenstein will leap in and all that kind of stuff. But Capcom goes in like a whole different direction with that stuff. Hence Felicia and the samurai character and Lord Raptor and all that. And what I really like, so there were a few designs in mind when they created Darkstalkers, and one of them was going to be a shape-shifting character that originally started off as kind of like a leopard concept, and what was decided is they were going to make it based on the Japanese folklore idea of the Bakaneko, which are these mystical creatures that are cats, but have got magical powers and can actually shapeshift into humans. Felicia was definitely a Bakaneko as far as her origin is concerned. And why did they name this cat woman, this Bakaneko? Why did they give her the name Felicia? The origin of Felicia is happiness, which is kind of unusual. And this is something I like about Felicia's character compared to the other Darkstalkers. The game had this concept of the demon world entering ours, and these monstrous creatures would then emerge, and then they would start to fight each other. And although most of them are grim, villainous, or if nothing else, kind of selfish, grim characters, Felicia is this ray of sunshine and happiness. I mean, she's bright and colorful, and that speaks to her personality and her spirit because, according to the lore behind Darkstalkers, all the characters have been fleshed out, as many video game characters have. And in Felicia's case, her background is that she was raised by a nun called Sister Rose, and not long into her youth, Felicia discovered that she's not like the other kids. She's actually this monstrous creature with these like giant paws and a tail and the ears and everything. And that would actually, according to various video game story sources, Felicia would be quite sad about this, but due to her being raised by the nuns, she would try her best to look beyond that. And she actually developed this fascination with singing and dancing and being on stage. And if you look up any stories or any of the detail behind Felicia's character, that's actually a major motivator. She wants to be a star on Broadway. She wants to be out there singing and dancing for the public, which is bizarre given that this character starts off as this strangely nasty Catwoman character. The fact that they've imbued her with this idea of being, let's take, what has started off as this curse that I've been given and go into a positive direction with it. I really love that about Felicia. I think that's very endearing. And I hope this explains to anybody who's played any of the Darkstalkers games. If you follow Felicia through to the final round of combat, there'll usually be a story synopsis that sums up what happened next. And depending on the version of the game, I think the arcade has her sitting in a bathtub dreaming of being on stage one day. And the home port versions, when you finish Felicia's story, she's running a monastery herself, and she's got kids underneath. And if you don't know that this is what's going on with Felicia's kind of personality and her motivation, you might think to yourself, this is bonkers territory. Again, that's what I love about her and the way Capcom just take ideas and run with it. One of the characters that Felicia interacts with quite often is John Talbane, the werewolf in the roster for Darkstalkers. They obviously have much in common, being kind of feline and canine creatures, and it's very interesting to spot the differences between both of them. The anime series really delves into this territory quite a lot. But John Talbane hates being a monster, and he hates humans, and he's a very dour character. Whereas Felicia will have quite a few scenes where she will be kind of the counter to that. Whereas, she's saying that the humans are our friends, and let's look on the positive side. It does make for a very interesting dynamic between the two of them. But it hasn't always been a lonely life for Felicia. In the game, if you pull off certain hyper moves, a bunch of similar creatures to herself will suddenly show up and perform various execution modes and stuff like that. There's a whole collection of them. There's Alto is one, another girl is Grace, then there's Lucy, Nono, Pico, Nana, and even Mimi. These are all little characters that will appear during Felicia's execution or special combo moves. A further note about actual gameplay with Felicia and controlling her on screen, I've used different kind of control methods, and one really stands out. Clearly, when I started off with the Darkstalkers cabinet, I was using a stick and buttons. I have used a fight stick for playing Darkstalkers, and it's good. I've even done, there's the Sega Saturn emulator where I can hook up a controller which is a bit more like a Sega Saturn, D-pad and 6 buttons. That's not bad for controlling Felicia, but I want to take a moment here and just show Darkstalkers Resurrection was recently made freely available for those of us with PlayStation Plus, and I played Darkstalkers using the PS3 controller, and it's actually very good for a specific reason. I'll do a little demo here. So here we are with a demonstration of me playing Darkstalkers Resurrection on PS3, and I'm hoping it's coming out here, but I'm actually showing you why I like playing this with the PS3 controller. First of all, I'm doing really well, but not only that, you can kind of see how my hands are a little bit kind of in a claw formation. That really works well, given I'm playing this Catwoman. I feel like I'm actually there scratching the eyes out of the character. So it's a really visceral kind of a control scheme. Even though a fight pad is better, or a fight stick is always better, I like doing this because I feel like I'm just ripping away with my claws here. Oh, he's doing really well now. Take that. And yeah, I really enjoy playing it this way. I don't normally play using a controller like this for a fighting game if I can avoid it. Much prefer using either a fight stick, or if not, then something along the lines of like the Sega Saturn controller, you know, with all the buttons on it, or the Sega Genesis 6-button controller. That's usually my preferred way of going. But with this particular game, and given it's Felicia with her cat-like claws, I just really like going in here with all my fingers. Like you can see, I'm just working them like crazy, and it actually works really well for getting through the game. Now, let me just see if I can finish off Bushido here. Oh, sorry, Basha Man. I always get him confused. Ooh, he's really getting me up here. There we go. Got him. Now, as I mentioned before, there's also Darkstalkers anime, which my wife and I quite often review anime on my channel. Haven't actually looked at any of the Darkstalkers stuff yet, and I think I'm going to put that into the wheelhouse for a couple of reasons. Now, there's two kinds of anime that exist. There's, I think it's called Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, and also Vampire Hunter, which are similarly the names of some of the titles that these characters appear in the fighting games. In Japan, they're called like Vampire Hunter and Night Warriors. When it came to the West, I think it was called Darkstalkers, or maybe Darkstalkers is like the subtitle of it. And so the anime goes under those previous names. There was also a Darkstalkers TV series that was made in the West for kind of the Saturday morning cartoon channel or crowd. And there's a stark difference between the two. The anime has, much like a lot of other anime, a very serious kind of adult tone. That's where those scenes exist between John Talbane and Felicia. And it's very good from what I've heard. I'm looking forward to actually reviewing it. But there's also this horrendous Saturday morning cartoon Darkstalkers TV show. I'm sort of predisposing that it's horrendous. I haven't actually watched it, but in looking at the footage of what that show looked like compared to the Night Warriors / Vampire Hunter stuff out of Japan, the Saturday morning cartoon stuff just looks, it looks terrible. Maybe I'll watch it. I feel like I should, now that I've talked about Felicia so much. I feel the responsibility lies on me to check out Darkstalkers, the Saturday morning cartoon. And if nothing else, the main reason would be that Felicia's kind of the main character of the Saturday morning cartoon version. She's cast in a very strange light, and from what little I've seen, it seems like she's kind of the older cousin or aunt of a kid, and she's very covered up. I mean, if she's practically naked most of the time in the games and in the Japanese anime, she's wearing a pretty charitable bikini in the Saturday morning cartoon version. And I've even seen pictures of her with her hair up, I guess in disguise like a human, something like that. So, yeah, perhaps I will give Darkstalkers, the Saturday morning cartoon, and also Darkstalkers, the anime, a proper review sometime. Heck, if it's got Felicia as the main character, it can't be all that bad, right? When I finished off my Digital Crush episode 4 and led a little teaser to this one, number 3 for Felicia, I did say we're going to be delving into some strange territory, and there's no doubt that when I see Felicia among my characters, I do think to myself, ooh, this is definitely challenging the standard of what is considered beauty, and I'm very curious if I'm going to get some strange looks and comments down in the commentary section below. But I wanted to give Felicia her fair shake, and it does kind of remind me of a sort of a small group, a niche within the both cosplay and kind of video game geek culture crowd. There's this sort of subsection of people that are often referred to as furries. And I've always enjoyed seeing those folks at any events that I've been to. Fan Expo's had a few folks like that. And I want to be as inclusive as I can be for anybody that's watching my videos. I know that the furry crowd can often get some raised eyebrows among other people who are into cosplay or video games or anything nerdy and to do with anime and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to really make sure that although Felicia is probably one of the poster children of that group, not that I'm in the furry community at all, but I definitely can kind of see where that crowd is coming from, and I like her, and I guess if they like her too, then hey, let's all group together and be part of one larger community, I would say. Now, to kind of bridge across from that, I definitely feel a little odd that, again, this is a half-naked Catwoman on my channel, and you're being such a perv, you dirty old man. So what I'm going to do now is actually show that there are other members of the geek culture crowd who, without a doubt, enjoy with the tongue-in-cheek kind of approach Capcom's Felicia. In fact, I'm going to insert a little clip here. I hope I don't get any copyright strike or weirdness for this. But Felicia Day, a couple of years ago, was doing a series about if she was going to gather a bunch of animals on her own ark, what would be, let's all vote on what would be the particular lead selections for each of the animal groups. And she did one about cats. And I thought it was rather hilarious, all the things she had to say about Capcom's Felicia herself. And I'm just going to show that here.
And to wrap it up, it's everyone's favorite, ridiculous, scantily clad vixen, me. No, it's an alternate anime version of me from Darkstalkers with planetoid-sized boobs and blue hair, also named Felicia, so there's a connection. It's really easy to mix this up. Yeah. She's got a cute, toothy smile and a slashing combo that will steal your heart. Jiggle, jiggle, slash, slash. I'm not objectifying her. I was, but I take it back. Plus, it would be pretty useful to have a cat you could actually hold a conversation with on board. It would be weird if she wanted to crawl in my lap. Stop the fantasies. No fan art, but the con here is obvious. I mean, just look at her. There's no way she's not high maintenance with that hair and the... And who wants to be locked away in a boat with a diva until the floodwaters recede? Besides the entire male gaming population. All right, you get my point here. I had a point. Did I?
Yes, moving on. I'm a big fan of Felicia. Well, I like Felicia Day as well, but Capcom's Felicia, yes, she has been definitely top-tier material for me for years. I mean, ever since that moment, I first tried out Darkstalkers, chose her for the reasons I will get to when I get to person number 1, and just discovered what a joy and delight she is to play. And the wackiness to her personality. She is one of the main reasons why I really love Capcom as a developer. And again, I'm not a Halloween or monster movie kind of a guy, but well, Felicia, without a doubt, she makes the approach into that monster realm well, very appealing, very attractive indeed. Yep, Felicia. Really like this character, always have ever since that first time I played Darkstalkers. And although it's kind of obvious in some ways what is so appealing about this particular character design, I like the fact that she has such an unusual personality. I mean, there's the kind of this sex kitten, if you will, but there's also a ferocity and in the various anime, a real depth to her as far as what her personality is like. So, you know, there's some of the when the claws come out, you know. So yeah, unapologetically, I like Felicia. I always have. There's a very strong connection between her and person number 1 on this list, which I will go into much more detail when I do person number 1 on this list. But we'll get there. And that means person number 2 is coming up. Now, in this video, I did talk about how the furry community tends to get a few raised eyebrows by various groups, people who are gamers or popular culture references, that kind of stuff. And I want my YouTube videos to be very inclusive of all different kinds of groups and communities and that kind of stuff. So I fully embrace them, and as I say, I hope if Felicia's kind of your poster girl, then I get where you're coming from on that. Now, that line of logic also applies to person number 2. So I better do a little hint right now of who's coming next.